baseball romantics. My name is Jason Wood, and this is the Romantic About Baseball podcast. This is our first episode, so we're going to kick it off reviewing what we've seen through the opening week of the Major League Baseball season. With me are two of my colleagues. I have Nico Malika and Bruce Sart joining me. Nico, would you like to briefly introduce yourself? I know you're a Mariners fan, so you may want to start off by saying, my name is Nico, and I am a Mariners fan.
Yeah, so hey, good to be with you guys this morning throughout the first week of ball. Excited to talk, excited to overreact, and sort of Monday morning quarterback the first about week or so of the baseball season. I'm a Mariners fan, but it's okay. I'm just excited to talk ball and sort of dissect what's occurred the first week and what stands out and maybe what doesn't stand out, and looking forward to talking ball with you guys and getting the best overreaction of the day.
Absolutely. So also with us is Bruce Sart. We've nicknamed him the closer. He has a wealth of baseball knowledge. We actually kidnap Bruce off the side of the road. We keep him in a room. We bring him out when we need him. So Bruce, appreciate you. We'll feed you later. Could you introduce yourself to the crowd here?
So don't believe the hype, everybody. They let me have coffee, so that's okay. But yeah. So I am lifelong baseball fan. I am very much, and you guys might get this, an underdog fan. I love to see, we were talking, and Nico's going to talk about this, so I'm not going to steal his thunder for later, but I love looking at these teams that are doing things that we didn't expect them to do and getting excited about it and then being disappointed later, but that's okay. You get excited about it for those few minutes. So hopefully the three of us are going to bring this together in a really exciting way for everyone to hear, connect with, and then talk back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. The page that we have, the Facebook page, I'm sure many of our listeners are going to be followers of the page to start with. So welcome. We appreciate you all for following our Facebook page and now for listening to our podcast. I would also say that this is just an extension of that page. We want to talk ball just like we do on the page. We talk a lot of current events. On the page, we do a lot of nostalgic stuff as well, and we'll dive into some nostalgic stuff eventually on the podcast. It's mainly going to be focused on what we've observed the previous week in the current season. So today we're going to kind of start off with a little review of what we've seen and looking at the standings. It's early. Obviously, we're only a week in, but we just want to make some observations, some general observations. And Nico, I'll kick it to you to start off. Just kind of your general thoughts on what we've seen this first 7 days of the baseball season.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so a lot sticks out, and like Bruce was alluding to before, we're going to get excited for the first week, and then come June, July, it's going to be a lot different. But for me, my observations throughout the first week is just the dominance of the NL West. When you look at the NL West and you take out the Colorado Rockies, right? Because they're obviously the White Sox of the West. They have a combined, and I'm talking about the Dodgers, Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks. Excuse me. They're 24-3 combined record throughout the first 6 going on 7 days of the week. So again, we can expect it from the Dodgers, right? We knew they were going to be a juggernaut. We weren't so sure on the Padres. And if you look at the Giants and the Diamondbacks, they've looked incredible. Just looking at Arizona handle New York the last few nights, and how good does that rotation look? Zach Gallen absolutely just a gem last night against the Yankees. Corbin Burns looks as advertised. That's a really good team out there in the West, and they're showing their class already. But I think, like I said, I look at that 24-3 record in 6 days. That's incredible. Taking out the Rockies throughout the season, and even the Giants. You look at sort of how they've played throughout their first week of ball. They look like a new team. That Buster Posey effect has really already kind of kicked in. And they look like they're ready to surprise some people this season. So I'm just looking at the NL West and the dominance of it. There's a lot more, but I wanted to start there because 24-3 is absolutely incredible. And again, it's a small sample size. We're gonna lean on that in this episode, right? But what a start for the NL West.
Absolutely. Yeah. 24-3 is impressive, and it would be something else. I mean, we're very early. We'll keep making that caveat, but it would be something else if the NL West took all of the playoff spots, like all the NL wild cards didn't leave anything for anybody else. So we'll kick it to Bruce. Bruce, your general thoughts on this first week of the season?
Yeah, so a lot of what Nico said is pretty right on. That NL West is right now very exciting baseball to watch. And I'm looking at the data over here on my other screen with what the Giants are doing is really awesome. Again, 2 series, not a lot of sample to go off of, but really, you think about it, if you look at who they've played, the Giants haven't played anybody who has that over 500 record yet. The Padres haven't either, at least so far. Whereas the Dodgers just beat up on everybody, which is kind of what we kind of felt that coming in, that it was going to be that. The question is, how long is that going to go on? Are we going to be in June having the same conversations, or are they going to come down? Because at the end of the day, players play to the back of their baseball cards, right? They always come back to the back of the, they'll get hot. They'll play over their heads for a while. If they play over their heads for an entire season, that's something, that's impressive. You look at, and we might get into this at some point, I don't know, but if you look at like Jurickson Profar and the numbers he put up last year, which were head and shoulders above what he did throughout his entire career, is that who he is now, or is he going to regress this year? The expectation is that he'll regress. Willie, we don't know because he's suspended for 81 games. I will point out that he was very quick to point out he was tested all last year, so he didn't fail any. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But the reality is, who is he as a player? Has he turned a corner, or is he Melky Cabrera-ing it? If you remember Melky Cabrera, who was this pretty good player, and then all of a sudden he was a really good player, and he got this big contract with San Francisco, I believe it was with the Giants, and then he popped it. Then he tested positive, and we found out that was really who he wasn't that guy. He was really the other guy, but the PEDs helped him become a different guy. But the theory is that if someone's doing it, they're going to get caught. I don't know how much I believe that or don't believe that right now. And the penalties for doing them are non-existent for players. An 81-game suspension where the Braves have now lost the guy that they were counting on to be there. Who was hurt? The team or the player? I'm not saying the player doesn't care, but at the end of the day, the Braves now lose him for half the season. They lose that guy that was going to fill the hole until Acuna comes back. They lose all of those things. And even if Profar comes back and is the guy that they want him to be, he's ineligible for the postseason. So who's hurt?
Yeah.
The Braves are hurt, and they have no recourse against him. So those are so I think that impact is something that people are going to be talking about as we get into the season. What's that impact going to be for these teams? Where do the Braves go from here? 0-7. They haven't looked good at all. They haven't hit anything. Like, they can't hit a baseball, they can't hit a softball, they can't hit a beach ball, they can't hit anything. That is definitely something that is an anomaly, because even with everybody out, they did it last year, they did it the year before.
Right.
Has the team lost that mojo? Has the team lost that ability to do those things? I don't know, but we're going to find out, because, the Braves, unlike the Giants, they're 0-7 against teams over 500. So they're playing, and they are playing tougher teams than, say, the Giants are. Jason, you mentioned, do all the teams come out of the West for the wild card? As good as the NL East is supposed to be, I still believe the Mets are going to Met. I said it before that I still think they're going to be a fringe team at best. And the Braves certainly don't look playoff worthy right now. The Phillies look really good, though. So,
Yeah.
but but who are some of these teams? The Phillies haven't played anybody who's won any games either. So
Yeah.
so it's hard to say.
I,
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where my focus is too, kind of closer where Nico's is on that stuff. I don't put any credence into torpedo bats making people better hitters. I don't put any credence into the fact that, or the idea that this has made Milwaukee a bad team. I think they're a bad team. I said they're a bad team in our pre-opening day thing. I think this is who they are, the Brewers. I'm a little not surprised at the American League Central. They're clumped together in mediocrity, and I think that's who
yeah,
they are.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
personally, I would have liked to have seen the Royals take that series against the Brewers. I'm a little surprised they didn't.
Yeah.
But I also think they're struggling with who they are as well. Like, who are they as a team right now? And they're trying to find that, as well. So those are some of the things that are jumping out to me as things that are hip and happening besides the usual, my team's 5-2.
I just want to shed some light on the Braves for a moment. I don't want to spend, I'll let Jason take his Braves talk. I think a lot of it has to do with just, going into LA and then going into San Diego. It's like going into the Lions Den. You know what I mean? That's a tough draw. I'm not saying they couldn't have squandered a game or two for the sake of it. I mean, they had the ball game last night until they didn't. But that speaks to who the Dodgers are. I mean, you're going to have to beat the Dodgers on any given day. You're going to have to you're going to have to beat them because if you're going to play a close ball game with the Dodgers, that lineup is so deep that, I mean, unless you got Mariano Rivera coming out of the pen, I mean, anybody can beat you for the most part. I mean, you look at Muncy; he's been ice cold, and he found a way to hit a ball in the gap and score 2 runs. So I think the Braves, my analogy with them is give them a mulligan. I think this is a mulligan. I know the Profar thing it hurts. And like you said, Bruce, it's he'll come back, but if they make the postseason, he'll be ineligible. So, it hurts the team. And I just keep thinking of last night when I kept looking at Brian Schnitker. I mean, he looked like just a man in such misery. I felt bad. Such a great manager. He's being dealt a tough card out of the gate. But I think the Braves will be okay. I think you got to give them a mulligan for the first 2 series, and once they get the first win off their back, I think you'll see the Braves. Again, Strider and Acuna, they're going to be coming back, and there's just too much talent on that team, even without Profar for half the season. I still believe they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into the Braves, but absolutely correct. The two teams they've played are combined 15-0, right? So you do have to take that into account. I'll dive a little deeper. I want to get Bruce. Bruce looks like he's got some thoughts. I'll go back to Bruce. I'll dive deeper into that in just a minute. But Bruce, what are your thoughts there?
No, I was just going to jump in and agree with Nico that I think once the Braves get that monkey off their back, that first win, which I don't even know how much that Ohtani home run hurt them. That had to kill them because they were so close to getting over the hump. And it's the Dodgers, except somebody said, hey, let's pitch to Ohtani with some runners on, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'll start my little deep dive into the Braves here because they're obviously the topic. When you have a team like the Braves that's predicted to do well, most people's top 5-ish in the preseason. I think, Nico, you actually picked them to win the World Series, if I remember correctly. So not calling you out there, still early. So last night, particularly, they get up 5-0. And credit to Snicker, he rearranged the lineup. He put some guys in that are more contact focused than long ball focused, and it paid off early. They scored 5 runs very early in the game, but then they did not score again, and the pitching did not hold up. You had Bryce Elder versus Blake Snell. You figured going in, this is not good for the Braves, but they fought. They did get it to the 9th inning. You have Iglesias, but things compound themselves in baseball, and Iglesias hasn't gotten a lot of time. This is only his 2nd appearance because the Braves have been getting beaten. He hasn't had a chance to come in and close the game, so now he's in there in a big situation, and he's facing maybe the best player of our generation. So no, not surprising that Otani went deep. Honestly, as good as Iglesias has been for the Braves, I was not at all surprised personally with what happened. So yeah, that was a crushing blow, and you could see it. I saw it in Snicker as well, Nico, and then
Yep.
there's a really good post game interview. If you get a chance to watch it, you want to see kind of the mood in that clubhouse. Watch Austin Riley's interview afterwards. He came up with, I believe, the bases loaded last night, a big situation, and he got caught looking, and he took responsibility. He said, "I got to be better. I've got to be better, and we've got to be better." And he absolutely did not put the blame on Raciel Iglesias. He said, "That's not that guy's fault. We got to do our job." So I think there's a mood in the clubhouse. What worries me about the Atlanta Braves, we saw some of this last year, even when they were healthy. Riley struggled mightily. Olsen struggled, especially at the start of the season. Albie struggled. This is not completely new for the Braves offense, which was largely the best offense we've ever seen in 2023. So not sure if they've got a book out on the Braves. The pitchers know how to get them out now. But that worries me. The Profar situation, like you said, Bruce, even if he comes back, you're going to work him back into the lineup. You're going to get chemistry going. And then if you do get to the postseason, he's gone. You got to replace him. And he's put them, you're absolutely right. It's the way the NCAA used to treat college football, right? You
Yeah.
would punish the school for maybe a boost you know, misdeeds, right? And put them on probation and they can't go to a bowl game. It feels the same way. You're punishing the player, sure. But really, at the end of the day, the Atlanta Braves, the fan base, and his teammates are the ones that are going to pay the price for Profar's unfortunate action. So, do I think the Braves are going to be this bad all year? Of course not. They're going to find some chemistry. That bullpen still isn't great, though. I mean, it's still on the back end. The rotation will get better. Strider will come back, but they lost Lopez. So it's kind of a game one, lose one situation. And I don't know if Double A, Alex Anthopoulos, the GM, is going to go out and make a lot of moves. The Braves made a concerted effort in the offseason not to spend a lot of money. He wanted to get back under the luxury tax. So
Mhm.
do I think the Braves are going to be this bad? No. Am I confident they're going to bounce back and make a playoff run? We'll see. I'm not there right now. I'm going to be at Truist this weekend, see them in person, and maybe things will get better. They need a win. They need a
Yeah.
win, like you guys said. I think that'll go a long way to helping them out. Um, So from here, guys, let's we got some talking points we want to hit. All of us. That was one of mine. So we'll just keep going. Nico, we'll throw it to you. Like another observation you've had so far that you want to hit on.
Yeah, so I again, there's so much, but we're going to dive into a couple. We're going to sort of dissect, some of the stuff that kind of stands out to us. Obviously, we just dove into the Braves, and we could talk about the Braves for another hour, right? I mean, there's a lot to talk about, and it helps that the fish are coming into town, right? That should help, right? Albeit
They're not playing that poorly right now either, though,
Not playing a
Nico.
bad ball. Yeah.
yeah, they're not. But again, like we mentioned in the beginning of our episode here, the standings are kind of funky right now, with the exception of the NL West. So what I want to jump to is I'm looking at Seattle. Obviously they're kind of, again, the record is what it is. We don't want to look at these records and make too much of it. Besides the fact that the NL West is starting out so hot. For me, the Mariners, there's already been a really common trajectory with their season so far, and they're winning. They've won 3 games, and they've won these 3 games. Generally very low scoring games. So again, they're relying so much on their starting pitching, right? It seems like if they don't get 5 excellent innings out of their starter, whether it's Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, or Wu, they can't score. And I'm sort of ringing the bell on them right now because they've again, small sample size, but they're showing you sort of who they are and who they were last season, which is a stellar starting rotation, and they're relying on really 2 guys. I would say 2.5 guys. You have Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez, and the question mark is Arozarena. Are we going to get Tampa Randy? He hasn't shown that. He's been very inconsistent. He's been batting in the 4-hole for the Mariners. So really, I'd encourage them. Like so many fans of baseball, you've got to make the trade. You've got to have to flip one of these starters. Luis Castillo makes the most sense. It doesn't have to be him though. I mean, you have some other arms you can deal, but I think that if they continue on the trajectory of hovering around 500 and relying on winning 3-2 or 1-0 or 4-1, they're going to have to make a deal. I would think possibly as early as May. So I'm looking at the Mariners and I'm seeing the same old Mariners as the last 2 seasons. And Jerry Dipoto needs to make a move. I know he likes to hit the headlines. He's always been a guy that wants to steal the headlines. He hasn't stole any now the last few winters. I don't know if that's ownership stepping in. They've been kind of frugal on spending and so forth. But and again, I look at their first 2 series. They played the A's. They split. The A's have the same problem in the other way. They can't pitch, but they can hit, right? And you're seeing the Cubs. I mean, I'd have to look it up. They've scored close to 30 runs in 3 games against the A's.
The Cubs actually, Nico, they've scored the most runs in the league so far. Now they played 9 games. A lot of them have played 7 or 8, but 65 runs. Seattle is currently 26th in runs. They've scored 18 runs. And
so you're seeing a similar pattern with the Mariners, and I'm you look at the series with Detroit now. They were able to squander a game. They won 3-2, courtesy of their staff. So, and then, they're getting outplayed by the inferior team, and they're going to have to make a move. So, thoughts on that, guys?
Castillo outdueled Skubal last night, but like you said, that's not going to happen every night. So,
right.
They got just enough last night to get by.
Right.
Bruce, let's kick it to you, man.
You mentioned, Nico, that Arozarena is hitting the 4th in the 4th spot. I don't like him in the 4th spot. I like him in the 5th spot. I like him maybe in the 3rd spot if he's Randy. If Randy's Randy, if he's Tampa Randy, 3, 5, 6 kind of in there. But you need a big bat in the lineup. You need an aircraft carrier. And that could be Julio. He could be that guy. He's just not. He's not carrying the weight, right? If you look at Arozarena's numbers this season, again, short sample size, his OPS is 843, but he's hitting 174.
Right.
And so that 174 is where you're missing that number 3 guy. You don't want a guy in the lineup hitting 174, even if his OPS is an 843. If you can keep that guy 843, 850, 860, and get that batting average to 250, he's a career 253 hitter. If you can get that guy, now you've got something. Now you're going to score a few more runs because those doubles, those walks that he's taking. He led the league in being hit by pitch a year or 2 ago. I don't know why, but he did. That meant he was getting on base, and you need Randy Arozarena on base. You need him on base before Julio, or if he's going to hit a few home runs. He's got 93 career home runs. Can he be the guy who's going to hit 25 home runs in Seattle? I don't know. That's a different ballpark than the Trump. But if he can display some of that power, he can provide a little protection in that lineup, and then maybe the Mariners start scoring some runs. And they need to. They're -11 a run differential. Every team in the AL West is a negative run differential right now.
Yeah, the Rangers just won back-to-back 1-0 games. So,
but they're still -7, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and you look at sort of what Eugenio Suarez has done in Arizona, leading the league in home runs, hit that grand slam against the Yankees. He was a Mariner, and they let him walk. And
5 hits, 5 home runs, Eugenio.
It's incredible, and then I agree with you, Bruce. I mean, I don't
Rodriguez,
like
by the way. Rodriguez 182. Yeah, Rodriguez is hitting 182 with 1 dinger so far. So early, small sample. We'll keep saying that, but still. And I think Rodriguez, if I'm not mistaken, is traditionally a very slow starter. But when you're talking about some
was last year, he was last year.
Yeah, there's so many teams in these leagues that they're you can classify as okay, they're pretty good. They're okay. They're going to be wild card contenders. I really don't think you can afford to get too far behind And that's another thing about the Braves that we didn't discuss. You can't get too far behind those AL West teams, or it doesn't matter how good you get later in the season, you may never catch up. So,
Yeah, but
yeah,
look at Julio. Also has 9 strikeouts out of 22 at bats.
yeah, not quite Devers
Yeah,
numbers, but yeah,
No,
I
it's not
think
Denver stuff.
yeah,
But still, those 9 strikeouts out of 22 at bats. You got a guy with a 788 OPS, which is okay. You
yeah,
want him to be the guy with the 853 that he was in 2022.
yeah.
But this you can't strike out that much if no one else is helping.
yeah,
You just can't.
They got
I
the
think there's
final thoughts on this, and we'll go ahead and move forward.
yeah, I think with Julio, there's just a tremendous amount of pressure on him, right? I mean, he signed a big contract. You know, he's the guy in Seattle, right? You know, he's the star. So I think he's just burdening all that pressure, and he knows he doesn't have the horses behind him to carry. You're relying on guys like Victor Robles and Jorge Polanco. So again, they'll have to make a move sooner than later, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get back that to be continued, obviously, on all these stories. I just kind of wanted, the page and the theme of what we've created here is romantic about baseball. So I really want to just really quickly, I'm going to throw a curveball here. Some general observations just about loving the game and what we've seen in the first week. We've already seen a cycle, and not from somebody you'd probably expect, right? It was Carson Kelly from the Cubs, right? So we've already seen the Yankees offensive outburst with 9 home runs and 20 runs. They absolutely obliterated the Brewers that day. So, torpedo bats notwithstanding, it was still a lot of fun to watch. Sometimes with baseball, you get a lot of 3-2s and 2-1s, and I love those too. I love a good pitcher still as much as anybody, but also you like to see some offense. We've seen the AL Central. They're all 2-4 right now, like you guys talked about earlier. So we kind of got the mediocre start, but somebody will probably kind of rise out of that. The Angels have won some games. The Cardinals have won some games. I just, the first week of baseball, if you're not a Braves fan, I think you've seen a lot of things that are just fun to watch, and sometimes I feel like we lose that as fans because we're so focused on the wins and losses, and as most of you, as all of you know, and most of our listeners probably know by now, I am a Braves fan. So I still enjoyed this first week, believe it or not. I've enjoyed watching other teams and other games and just trying to observe some cool things that have happened. So we haven't seen a no-no yet. We haven't seen a perfect game. We've seen a cycle. We've seen the home runs. We've seen some walk-offs. We saw one last night, obviously, with the Braves. So just some fun stuff, and that's what I love about the game. I'm trying to watch as much baseball as possible, so when we have these discussions, I can speak to whatever we're seeing. But if you guys have any general observations like that, just about cool things you've observed so far, feel free to jump in. But I'll kick it back to Nico or Bruce. You got something you want to throw in there?
No, go ahead, Nico.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you, with Jason. The nostalgia of baseball. What I love about the game, beyond what you mentioned with some of the cool stats, is it's with you every day. You know what I mean? It's with you every day, and no matter, like you mentioned, if whether you're a Braves fan or you're a Padres fan or a Yankee fan, every night or every afternoon, there's a game to look forward to. You know what I mean? There's somebody that each team has something that just provides the fan, and just keeps us so locked in. Um, and like you mentioned, it's cool to see some of those stats that you threw out. I think it's, I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think it's very interesting to see the A's playing in a minor league park. Um, Seeing those guys come out on opening day from the outfield fence, running in, it just kind of reminded me of going to a minor league game. So that was interesting. That was weird. But yeah, no, again, how could you not be romantic about baseball, right? Every night there's optimism. There's always something to look forward to. And, even though we're about a weekend and some teams are struggling, some teams are, flourishing, it's with you every day. And, I just look forward to it every day. I love seeing the packed house. I love seeing these stadiums packed and all the enthusiasm that comes with it. So,
Bruce, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so Jason, you said earlier, we haven't seen any no hitters. We haven't seen any perfect games or anything like that. But what we have seen are some really, really great pitchers' tools. You know, someone brought up Logan Gilbert a little bit earlier. He pitched really well. He just got out pitched a little bit. You know, we saw. You know, I mentioned him because he's not somebody that everyone talks about. I also want to bring up Mackenzie Gore on opening day against the Phillies. The kid was electric. His stuff popped. It was so to watch, and that's as somebody who was not rooting for the Nationals. The Wheeler Gore matchup was just fantastic to watch. Both of them were on. Both of them were great, and it wasn't the bats. It was them. You know, they were hitting their spots, and unfortunately for the Nationals, you know, you saw what happened after Gore leaves. But those are the types of things that I really enjoy. Those are the types of things that, you know, I love to watch the games. You know, the 1-0s, the 2-1s, those are really exciting games to me. I'd love to see those games happen that way. And then there's that big moment, right? There's always that moment where the tide turns just enough that that 2-1 victory happens. And that is just as exciting, just as thrilling as Otani hitting that home run against the Braves last night to me. Those are the moments, big moments, little moments. That's what really brings the romance of the game out, are the little bit of moments. And the greatest thing about the game and the worst thing about the game at the same time is you get to do it again tomorrow. You had a horrible day, but you got to go out and do it again tomorrow. You can redeem yourself as a player. Or you had a great day, well, you got to go out and do it again tomorrow. That is what's wonderful about this, about the 162 games. And I wish we didn't, you know, we can talk about this some other time, but you know, the playoffs devalue those 162 games, but they're still there to watch every day and be able to get just that little bit of squeeze a little bit of juice out of them every day.
Absolutely. Nothing better than a trip to the ballpark. I'm going a lot already. I love it. Yeah, so threw you guys a curveball there. It just occurred to me that we needed to throw that in there because it is a big part of the page and how we got this started. And I always want to remember that. If you want to capture, to me, the essence of baseball, go watch the highlights. I'm sure most of our listeners have, but just watch the Kirk Gibson at bat against Dennis Eckersley in the World
Mhm.
Series. The lead up to that and the moment and the home, that captures the essence of romantic about baseball. And I'm not a Dodgers fan, so but I still believe that. All right, so I want to get back to you guys' talking points. I've kind of covered what I wanted to talk about, but Nico, what else did you have on your agenda today?
Yeah, well, sort of kind of how I opened up with. Again, I'll briefly mention again the dominance of the AL West, specifically the Dodgers and Padres. Looking forward to those two teams meet. Right, they had I think could be the best rivalry in baseball, Padres and Dodgers at this point. So again, they're a combined 15-0, and really looking at the NL West dominance. And all 4 out of the 5 teams will exclude the Rockies, right? They all seem to be competitive. You know what I mean? Obviously, the Dodgers are great, but looking down the line, Arizona, San Francisco, good ball clubs. I mean, they're pitching, they're hitting. Their managers seem to have a pulse right now in the clubhouse. So I sort of wanted to open up that can of worms of, outside of the Dodgers, right? Because we know the Dodgers are going to win the division. We think, right? Maybe you bet it, maybe you bet the other way. But so I guess my question to you guys is, and to have a discussion is, who's real and who's not in the NL West, right? Are the Padres real? We weren't sure because, all winter we were hearing that, Dylan Cease could be on the trade block. Michael King could be on the trade block. AJ Preller is, if there's one GM I like to sit down and talk ball with, it's him. He is so unpredictable because prior to opening day, first of all, the Padres had a great season, right? Last year they had a great season. You can make the argument if they get past the Dodgers, they might have won the World Series, right? The Padres. So they've been weird. That's why I think so many of us were so apprehensive to put them in our playoff picture, as we opened the season, because we weren't sure what to expect with the Padres. You know, first of all, I don't know why they would trade Michael King anyway. They just acquired him when they traded for Juan Soto. Why would you trade Michael King? And then you see them yesterday lock up Jackson Merrill to a nice 9-year contract. You know, and that kid is incredible. I mean, what a talent. I mean, I again, you can't forecast how his career is going to go, but I mean, he showed you everything thus far. So, again, the Padres are very interesting because they're obviously off to a hot start. And like we mentioned, it's a small sample size, but they look like that same team towards the end of last season where they just were hot and they just ran into the Dodgers and it was just a heavyweight fight. So right now I'm looking at the Padres and I'm sort of buying stock on them because the unpredictability of AJ Preller and the way he approaches his team, it just draws. You know what I mean? You just didn't know what to expect of the Padres. I had them out of the playoffs because I thought this was like I thought they would be kind of a team that would do a soft sell come July.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, maybe trade a couple chips, and I wasn't really sure, but they look great. And you know, in regards to the rest of the division, Arizona looks terrific. I mean, they've improved. You know, they were the best offense in baseball last year. And you know, now they've got Josh Naylor, Corbin Burns. So that's a really good team in Arizona that nobody really pays too much attention to because of the market. But and then there's the Giants. I mean, they again, small sample size, but you know, they look much better. So it looks like, you know, Buster Posey's already having an impact on that team. You know, they're starting, you know, again, I don't want to say they're resembling the team of the 2010s, but you know, they look like they're ready to surprise some people this year.
Don't
So
get ahead of yourself there. Don't get
right,
ahead of yourself.
no.
They're vastly improved though. They're vastly improved. By the way, unless you guys can double check me a glance here, but looks like we don't get a Dodgers Padres series until early June, which is unfortunate, but I'll be here before we know it. Looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Don't forget though, as we record this, we have Dodgers Phillies this weekend, and we haven't even discussed the Phillies really. Jack Wheeler did his thing last night. Just another amazing performance for him. I think it was his 13th straight start with 6 innings or more pitched and 2 or less earned runs. I think he gets taken for granted. Sometimes we talk about great pitchers, but Bruce, let's keep it moving. What are your thoughts here around what he was talking about with the Padres? Are you buying or selling the Padres, or is it too early to say? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly impressed with the way the Padres are playing. They are they're playing good baseball. They're winning games. They're winning games in a decisive way. They're scoring runs. They're pitching really well. I like what they're doing. It almost feels like there's something there that hasn't been there in the past with that team. You know, we'll see how it plays out as we move forward. I would argue that last year, you know, Nico, you brought up the playoffs and how the Dodgers and Padres came together and slugged it out, and they really did. I would argue, if not for maybe one or two pitches, the Padres win that series. I would also argue, and I'm not looking at the stats or anything like that, but I would argue the Padres outplayed the Dodgers. They just didn't outscore them, which, you know, is obviously the important part. But for the Padres to beat the Dodgers this year wouldn't surprise me at this point anyway. I had kind of the same ideas that Nico had surrounding the Padres coming in. This idea that, well, you know, if they're trying to shop all these guys in the offseason or they're having discussions, then they must not be that serious about winning this year. You know, they're gonna be that team that's on the fringe of the playoffs, hoping to make the playoffs so they can get that extra revenue. And you know, you never know what happens when you get in the playoffs anyway, right? Anything can happen once you're in the playoffs. So I kind of felt like that was the approach they were taking, but they're playing really good baseball right now. You know, the Giants are playing good baseball too. I would liken both teams to the we don't have to deal with Blake Snell effect anymore. But on the Giants side, you can't count out how good of a manager Bob Melvin is over there. I am sure he's having an impact on these guys. They upgraded their infield a little bit, so don't count them out. I'm not sure if I'm buying them yet, but I wouldn't count them out right now with the baseball they're playing. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens down the line a little bit. I know that Melvin got out of San Diego because he didn't like the way the front office ran. So it was just a bad, maybe just not a good mix there. But San Diego's certainly winning some ball games, and they're certainly impressing a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a story to watch. So, another thing to love about baseball, what these teams are now in early April may not be anything near what they are in late September, right? So I think, the other sports, the NFL, you get off to an 0-2, 0-3, 0-4 start, you can almost hang it up, and we kind of know who you are
Mhm.
already. In the NBA, you kind of go into the season knowing who your good teams are going to be, and it rarely surprises you. MLB, I mean, last year, if you guys remember, I believe the Astros started something like 8-20. I mean, they were
Yeah.
terrible. They came back and won the AL West. And yeah, they didn't make a playoff run, but they did come back and win their division. So, what you are right now doesn't necessarily mean that's what you'll be. And that's what's so interesting about this. They look so good right now. You could make an argument the Giants, who they've beaten so far, but we don't know because we don't know what those teams are going to be. I still kind of think the Reds might be better than what they looked in that series against the Giants. So we don't know. We'll keep watching, and that's why we've put that caveat on all this. But it's fun to talk about, right? I think we've had some really good discussion around what we've seen so far. All right, guys, good stuff. I'm going to give you one thing to chew on for next time, and you guys, we can discuss this off air too. But Ronald Acuna Jr., he's coming back soon-ish. 2 surgically repaired knees. Is Ronald Acuna Jr. going to be a Mike Trout type talent that we never get to see the absolute
Mhm.
longest duration of their peak seasons? Just something to chew on for next time that kind of worries me about Ronald Acuna. Love him to death, but worries me. All right, so we'll wrap it up. Guys, this has been great. Love just talking ball. I think this is fantastic. I hope our listeners are going to enjoy listening to us kick things around. And we want to get feedback from them as well and take their questions and their observations. So at the end of this, I believe we're going to put up our email address. So you guys feel free to email us your questions, your comments on what we've talked about. Certainly, we are open to your opinions as well. We're just guys talking ball, and we want to get our fans' feedback. So keep following our page. And if you haven't followed our page on Facebook, it's Remaining About Baseball. It's an easy to find logo. It's Babe Ruth with sunglasses on, so you should be able to find it pretty quickly. And we're going to do this weekly. It's going to be a weekly show for us, the podcast, and we'll keep expanding. We're still growing and we're still experimenting. So we appreciate everybody who's listened to episode 1, and hopefully one day we'll be thanking you guys for listening to episode 200. So Bruce, Nico, appreciate you guys. Great stuff. Awesome discussion. And we will talk to everyone next week. Thank you guys.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ball game.